Hello and welcome to a Song of Ice and Fire battle report. In this game we'll be playing Free Folk against Night's Watch in the Clash of Kings scenario. This is my opponent's Night's Watch army, and it's a very elite small count list. It's only 6 units, 2 non-combat units, 4 combat units, which is very low, both in terms of just general weight and activation count, even by the standards of Night's Watch, who are nominally an elite army. There's a few things that it's doing to try and make up for this. I think partially successfully, but this is a little bit of a prototype, and some of the deficiencies and weaknesses would come out during play. Some of the strengths as well. It's certainly a very interesting army. So what are we running here? Firstly, this is led by Jon Snow. So this is Jon Snow's unit here. He's in a unit of Sworn Brothers. This is an okay combination. I think with his most recent change, he actually fits probably a little better into Rangers or even into Veterans. But he's fine in Sworn Brothers. Sworn Brothers are generically very good. He's lost his Rally Cry ability, but he's still he's a good attachment. Boldness and Courage is an incredible ability. And the fact that he vulnerables things on the charge now, I think, again, fits him in with a unit that can't already dish out lots of vulnerable, which the Sworn Brothers can. In the center here, we then have a unit of Ranger Hunters. These guys are just super solid, 7-point ranged hybrid melee infantry. They are easily the best ranged unit that only has short range in the game. At 7 points, they're excellent and they can delete entire free folk units in an activation. I think this would probably be a great place for Jon Snow because Boldness and Courage interacts really, really well with them, since they can often make both a ranged and a melee attack in the turn, but they're also totally fine running without an attachment. And then over here we have basically what forms the plan for dealing with the activation disadvantage. This is a unit of veterans with the relentless Boldness and Courage Watch Captain. And basically what this unit is saying is this is going to anchor the flank of the list and it is going to bear the brunt of all of the advantage your opponent can accrue from their activation advantage. Your opponent might have 2 or 3 or more activations at the end of a turn after the Night's Watch player in this case, but as long as those activations are just used to do things like make attacks against the Night's Watch, even the veterans, even if it's in the flank, you don't hugely care. Attacking this unit will almost always do more damage to you than it will more damage to the attacker than it will to the veterans, particularly once Shield of the Realms of Men comes down. They are prodigiously difficult to hit, and every attack against them, in addition to the counter-strike hits, will attract a relentless counterattack. Now, for my money, I would actually switch some of these around. Like I said, I would move Jon into the Rangers, and then I would move the Watch Captain into the Sworn Brothers, because the Watch Captain in Sworn Brothers is equally as nightmarish, and it would give 2 regiments that both say, punch us and it will suck for you. You'll have your Counter-Strike Disrupt on the Veterans, and you'll have your Relentless on the Sworn Brothers. Relentless is also incredible on Sworn Brothers, because if they haven't used their order yet, they will use their martial training, just absolutely mess you up. Rounding out the list, we have Coldhands in a unit of Ranger Vanguard Cavalry. These guys went to a 4+ save in the most recent patch, and they're really good. I think you can easily run them with or without Coldhands. At 7 points, they're super, super, super solid. Outflank also just got way better and way easier to use. I think this list is probably outflanking a regiment when you only have 3 units on the board to start with. Bears some risks, but Coldhands and his company, very cool. Finally, as NCUs, we have Maester Aemon, who is in every single Night's Watch list forever and will be until they change him. He's just incredible for 4 points. He is one of the 2 best 4-point NCUs in the entire game. And then Othel Yarwick, Master of the War Machines of the Wall. Now, you could easily make the case that Othel Yarwick should be Core and Halfhand, particularly with Rangers in the list, because Core and Halfhand is insanely good, and especially with Rangers, he pumps them up and up and up. But there is a very specific reason for taking Othel Yarwick in this matchup against Free Folk, which we'll get to. Let's have a look at my list. So this is my list, and we are running a Free Folk list led by Rattleshirt Commander. Now, Rattleshirt, unlike Jon, is not an incredibly good commander. He's a little janky, he's got some issues, but he is very fun to play, and basically every patch, basically once every 6 to 12 months, I will try and make Rattleshirt work. And this is actually feeling pretty good. Now, Rattleshirt's not good, but Free Folk are incredible. So let's kind of break down what the list is doing and some of the ideas that I had. So firstly, we have Rattleshirt in 5-point Followers of Bone. This is always where I put him. I don't put him in Bone Lord's Chosen. They're too expensive, but he goes perfectly well in this unit. I have tried him with some other units over time, but really it was like Spearwives when Spearwives were busted. I think his natural home is in Followers of Bone. We then have a unit of Thenn with no attachments, although I am probably at some point during the game going to attempt to use Reform and Regroup to move something into this regiment. But for 5 points, they're excellent by themselves, and the kind of idea is, because Rattleshirt's cards will buff units, if I can boost the Thenn save to 3+, and their attacks save to 3+, and their attacks to 3+, I've kind of gotten myself a really good unit that I can then further buff with other things in the army. So they're a really great platform for Rattleshirt's cards, or otherwise, look, they're 5 points. They can sit on an objective and be basically good. We then have 3 raider units. We've only got 1 raid leader unit because we're trying to do a few other things with the list, but you should always have raid leaders in a free folk army. I like to have 2 if I can, but in this case we've got 1 because we're doing some things. Over here we have a Walrus clan chieftain in the unit of raiders. I had a point spare, but more importantly, remember I said we might use Reform and Regroup to move an attachment into these Thenn? He is a prime donor. Also for 5 points, yeah, they could just be more Thenn, but they are there are a lot of good things going for raiders. There are some synergies at play here. I kind of wanted to try this out as a very cheap line anchor because raiders with a Walrus clan chieftain are tougher, right? They are harder to kill than Thenn. At the same cost. It's just that they don't have the excellent hold the line order. They don't have they're quite the same offensive output by a very small margin, but it's a very small margin. But they do have insignificant, and insignificant is probably the best rule in the game. And then over here we have another unit of raiders with Jarl, the raid leader, in it. So he gives the unit outflank, same as the range of Vanguards have. So we'd have 2 outflanking units in this game. And this is one of the things that I wanted to try. So with free folk generally, you're kind of reliant on holding your numbers together, outnumbering your opponent, ganging up, etc. And actually projecting support to a unit that outflanks is kind of difficult. They're often very much on their own. They don't have a ton of stuff with them. And you have say you have Styr Commander. He's got all of these great cards that rely on things being nearby him. And that's kind of a bit of a theme. You really need units to mutually support in free folk. But with Rattleshirt Commander, he can buff a unit from across the table. As long as they charge into something, and there's a good chance they'll get a rear charge, and knock off a rank, Rattleshirt can pop his order to give them +1 save or +1 attack. And if they die, okay, sure, I lose those cards, they go into my discard, but Rattleshirt can fish them out of the discard and keep giving them to other units. So I thought that was kind of interesting and worth trying. To complement it, we've got Varamyr and his beasts, and in particular, the Shadowcat is really what I'm looking at here, although they're all incredible. The idea is that the Shadowcat will come in at the same time as Jarl's unit because it is not an outflanking model, right? It shares a timing, but it does not share the rules, so you can bring in both the cat and the raiders, and actually presenting 2 threats in your opponent's rear on a key turn is super good. That could be really interesting. So that's one of the things we're trying. Varamyr is great for 3 points. He's just sort of a solid combat solo. Just a clean, neat 3 points. He's not nearly as good as the Mountain at 4, but he's cheaper, so he's great. He's basically a fat, shaggy dog. But the real other money here is these guys, the Varamyr's Wolf Pack, and this is why Othel Yarwick is in the list. Othel Yarwick on the first turn can potentially kill these guys, and if they die, life is just so much easier for the Night's Watch player. Remember that big unit of veterans with the Night's Watch captain in it? Every single pertinent ability they have is turned off if these wolves charge into the flank. It's just a horrifically untenable situation. If you can kill them on the first turn, go for it. And that's why Othel Yarwick in the Free Folk matchup is just super, 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 super useful. In terms of NCUs, I'm running 2. I very much prefer Free Folk with 2 NCUs over 3. And we have Styr and Craster. Now, Craster, Val would be a very, very good NCU to add, but Styr is in the list because I have lots of ways to increase the accuracy of my units and their dice, but I don't have any native sundering. So say these Thenn go to 3+ to hit with weapon trophies, I want to make that 8 dice on 3s with sundering. I don't want to have it just be 8 dice on 3s. 7 dice on 3s. So Styr multiplies Rattleshirt very well, and he is more support that I can give to Jarl's unit and the cat. Jarl's unit can turn up, and I can put Styr's influence on them, and now it's a 7 dice with sundering unit. That's pretty scary. Then we have Craster. Craster could be Val in this situation. Val is a very good NCU, but I am trying to buff my unit's defense. I'm trying to survive. I'm trying to get into the late game so that I can actually get Rattleshirt's cards on stuff. And Craster kind of fits into that better. He's a panic button heal. It's not like this. He's not like I'm healing a giant with him, but he's basically okay. He's very easy to use. Very easy to just be like, cool, I'm just going to get some health from cards. He is super dependable. I actually probably use him more than I use Val these days because it's just very easy to make him work, and you can mitigate the absence of Val with all of your cavalry maneuver animals and with diversion tactics, etc. So, okay, this list is led by Rattleshirt. Is it an absolutely baller list? It's led by Rattleshirt, but it was super interesting to play. And look, it's got 10 things in it. It's going to basically be fine. It's leveraging Free Folk's strengths and trying out some new interesting stuff. Game was super good. Let's crack into it. All right, here we are, beginning of turn 1. Let's talk about game setup first. Clash of Kings, 3 objectives across the middle. You're trying to occupy those, fully overlap them with your units, and otherwise have your commander kill enemy units and ideally the enemy commander. When setting up terrain, I placed these 2 stakes. My opponent placed this corpse pile and this forest. Why did I place stakes? Because I have Thenn in this list. Thenn give you taunt. Taunt means if your opponent occupies, like let's say a unit walks onto this objective and sits on it, and you have some Thenn sitting here, they can taunt the unit over the stakes, onto the stakes. It's super good. Like, it basically lets you deploy stakes and have them be good for you no matter what side of the table that you're on. And I wanted it to be kind of miserable for my opponent to pick table sides. I wanted it not to be easy for me to have only good choices, my opponent to have only bad choices, and that's the way you do it. Because I have Varamyr and his beast as well, it's pretty easy for me to destroy these if they're in my way, and I've placed them so that there is space for a solo to get through there. So Varamyr will end up, for example, hiding out there at the end of the first turn. The corpse pile by my opponent, obviously he's running, firstly he's got Othor Yarwick, he's got Intimidating Presence, and I'm playing Free Folk with no morale buffs, whereas he's playing Night's Watch. The effect, so taking a Night's Watch regiment to 6+ morale is not that bad. Taking a Free Folk regiment from 7+ to 8+, that kind of sucks, particularly when you take extra damage and you have like Othor Yarwick firing into units. So I think this is totally fine. It also is great for the veterans, because if the veterans end up here and charges come into them, the charges will have to align over the corpse pile, which means it will get no rerolls, which means the veterans counterstrike and disrupt is like more valuable. Now I won the roll here and I snap picked choosing turn order. We've got 2 ambush units in the field, but on top of that, I was very comfortable letting my opponent pick table sides because I felt I had set up a table where I had no bad choices. So since there were no bad choices for me, I let him pick the side that he wanted, giving him Sophie's choice and letting me start deploy second. I will almost always, given the choice, I will almost always pick turn order, because if your opponent picks table side, they have to begin deploying first, which is a disadvantage. And deployment was actually super interesting. So the first thing my opponent deployed was he elected to not deploy. He outflanked with the cavalry, and you can't see them, but Jarl and his boys are over there, and I outflanked with them. And then things had to begin hitting the table. So the first thing that landed was the veterans, and I responded by putting the wolves there, and then he put down the rangers, and I put down the Walrus clan chieftain, and then he put down John and his bros, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4 deployments still to go. So I actually had a huge amount of choice here. I was able to just decide at this point, did I want my whole army to be basically here, or did I want it to be where it actually went down, or some combination of the two? And I can't stress how interesting and useful a choice that was. I ended up lining up to fight the Night's Watch one-on-one. Despite the fact I could have refused flank, I felt a refused flank would have benefited him a little more than me. Because, okay, sure, I could have fought over this space, but I really didn't want him to be able to concentrate force on one of my units while I had all of my crap sitting here. I would have deployed all of this stuff basically to seize one objective, and I could do that with Varamyr. So I elected to take the 1v1, actually lining up opposed to him, hoping to bring sort of multiple numbers to bear against his one regiment, and it would more or less work out. Now, just in terms of how we've deployed here, this is pretty classic, right? If you're running a small number of units, 3 or even 4, do not try and spread out and contest lots of space. If your opponent has more units than you, they are going to reach a point where they will have more stuff, they will have later deployments than you will, right? More units it's always going to give you deployment advantage. This is one of the reasons, for example, to do a 5-2 split. If you are playing 7 activations, you run 2 NCUs, you will have more deployments than your opponent. And what you are looking to do is set up a situation, what will happen is Like your opponent will end up in this situation. They'll be sort of deployed there, and you will be looking to concentrate force against the tip of their line. Because if you can destroy that, you can roll in across them. Now, for your opponent's part, if they spread out across the table, all they will do is engineer 2v1 opportunities everywhere for you. They want to really limit the 2v1, 3v1 opportunities to just the unit on the sort of the edge of the shield, the edge of the line, and that's why this is the veterans, because they are unholy gods to try and fight, except here's the wolves. So a lot of the game is actually going to be about, do the veterans avoid getting engaged by the wolves, or do they get engaged by the wolves? So I've got choice of first turn, and I've given my opponent first turn. This is because right now we are in a very controlled situation with regards to outflank. I have set up so that the only places he can outflank is he could have some cavalry come on there, or he could have some cavalry come on there. There is not space for them to deploy here, and there is not space for them to deploy there. You'll see that Varamyr is a little further back. So he has to deploy in front of me, and I can deal with it if he does. If he puts his rangers here, I'll charge into them with Varamyr. I'll weaken them. I'll do something. I'll probably weaken them with the. I'll take the letters and I will weaken them. And then if he charges me, I'll just take the swords, hit him back, whatever. And so, kind of wisely, he declines to bring the rangers on. This would be a bad situation for them. Now is not the time. They will arrive later. I'm going first, and I'm going to take the first activation that we'll do is we'll have Styr take the horse, and he's going to use that to move these Walrus clan guys forward. And the reason why we're doing that is if I don't take the horse, my opponent will, and he will begin the march of these veterans down this way. Now, if the veterans end up in a situation where they are on the corpse pile, maybe with John's unit here, they can still be fought 3v1. And I can get the wolves around the side, but I just want to get there first. I want to get to this objective first. I want to be the first one on it. I don't want to have to deal with having to dislodge veterans, because even if I get the wolves into them, the wolves will die sooner or later, and then that fight is horrible. So the first thing we have is that these guys move up, and then there's basically just a lot of faffing around. But what does happen, and what is very important, is that Othel Yarwick takes the bags, he has Sundering, he fires into the wolves, and he does not kill them. Now, he's not likely to. Just to be clear, he needs to hit all 3 of his attacks, because wolves are a 1-rank unit. He needs to hit all 3 of his attacks, and I need to fail all 3 of my saves. But if you can get a vulnerable onto the wolves, then it's not impossible. And if my list had been running, say, Val, any damage that he got through would have really mattered, because it would have let him maybe get the kill next turn. As it was, he did 1 wound, and I activated Craster, and then I healed it, because I knew what he was trying to do. But I think Othel Yarwick in this list, specifically for dealing with these bastards, is a super good idea. So otherwise this turn, what we basically have is we have a move forward. Everything on both sides will move up into various different positions. The Night's Watch will form a line approximately there, and the Free Folk will form a line approximately there, except that the Walrus clan will get onto this objective. Varamyr will move up to here. And the idea here is that basically he's ready. He's not going to face cavalry next turn, but he's going to pop onto this objective. And then the wolves come all the way out and around here into the flank of the Night's Watch veterans. The Night's Watch veterans sort of will be in this position there. The wolves will be up here, ready to make that flank charge to turn on their distractibility. And that's just about it. So no damage for me. I don't get any cards out. My opponent doesn't really get any cards out. I think a copy of... And Now His Watch has ended comes onto the veterans, which will be very relevant later on. Spoiler alert, but we kind of just line up. So here's what turn 2 looks like. So here we are at the beginning of turn 2, and the ambushing has begun. So firstly, we can see how things have lined up from last turn. We've got the Thenn. The Thenn are positioned like this just because I want them to have a march across there if they want to, but I'm kind of just thinking about ambush cavalry. I should really have remembered that ambush cavalry from my opponent can't turn up this turn, but if they don't go anywhere, I want to be in a position to maybe make safe these lines. But I have brought on Jarl over here and the cat over there. I gave some thought to putting the cat behind Jarl's unit, but I decided I want to do a proper double threat, and I have got the cat just far enough back so that Jarl's unit can't make a ranged attack, shift back, and shoot it. So this is just presenting a horrible nightmare for my opponent, and then I'm sort of set up to take the fight and sort of make the various push. Now my opponent He's got a vulnerable token down now, this time on the Wolves. That looks like a weakened, but please ignore it. It's definitely, we retrospectively made it into a vulnerable. And again, the first thing that happens is that Othor Yarwick activates, takes the bags, and makes the shot. And they survive again. Now, if I had they took 2 wounds. If I had not had Craster to heal them, they would be dead. But I did have Craster to heal them last turn, and I have Craster to heal them again this turn. Otherwise, so I basically do that. I use Craster. He takes the bags. I just take the swords because I want a situation where I can come in and have him not immediately sword me. So I take the swords and heal the wolves off, and then he plays. I think the card is called For the Watch. It's the card that lets you charge off of the horses on these Night's Watch veterans, and in they go to the raiders. Aemon Targaryen takes the horses, and the Night's Watch veteran charge in. Now they charge. It's not a disorderly charge, but it's over a corpse pile, and so they don't get rerolls, and so they inflict just 2 wounds to these guys. I passed my morale check, noting that I needed 7s because they have Iron Resolve. 2 wounds, it's super manageable, and so I don't have to use Walrus. I don't have to use Walrus Resilience. That's excellent. They will get to activate again, but we'll be fine. The general fight that happens here this turn, sort of a few things are going to go on. Firstly, I am going to recharge into the Rangers with Jarl's unit. They are going to do well over a rank of damage, and so we will get. They have Styr's thing on them. We will get armor trophies down. So this is now a 4+ save unit. The Rangers are going to activate. They're going to swing, pull back to here, face toward the Jarl's Raiders, and they will shoot them. But they are weakened, and 2, they are down multiple ranks, and Rangers hate being down ranks. They drop off from 7 to 5 attack dice. So really this does like 3 damage to Jarl's regiment. It's basically nothing, and the cat is totally fine. For its part, the cat, well actually what happens next is we move this unit over here. John's unit is just going to pull back to try and cordon off Jarl's unit. My opponent decides, basically the play that he makes is, the veterans are going to be fine. It will be okay. So we have to deal with this threat behind us first. So John's unit comes around to take this fight. The Rangers are faced inwards with the stakes behind them, and then the veterans take a swing. They get to actually make their attack, and they deal this time. I use resilience against the attack because they roll 7 hits, and I fail every single save, but that's only another 3 wounds. But then I fail my morale check and I take another 3. So the regiment is very dead, but that's okay. We use diversion tactics to move these raiders up to here. Then we activate the cat. The cat destroys the stakes, and then these raiders charge into the rear of the Rangers. I have made a stupid mistake at this point. I should have done exactly one thing first. This unit of Walrus Clan Chieftain Raiders should have retreated 1 inch. They would still be on the objective. They'd have locked these guys comfortably in place. A 1 inch retreat means that there's really no legal pivot. And I would be safe. Instead, I destroy the Rangers, which triggers Now His Watch Has Ended, which makes an attack, which kills the entire unit and gives a surge forth before they've activated. So that is super bad. That is really bad. It is not good that that happened. And that kind of sucks. Now, insignificant, again, greatest rule in the game, don't give up any victory points. But now the veterans are sitting somewhere like this, and it's a little messy. So, what do we do? Well, all right, we can still deal with this. The wolves, thankfully, are in the rear. They come in, they charge. Again, unfortunately, because before the watch is triggered, Shield to the Realm of Men has moved from the Rangers onto the veterans, so they have Shield of the Realms of Men. I would really have liked to have stopped that being played, but For the Watch is a way. Watch is Ended is a way of getting the card on. The wolves come in the rear. Rattleshirt comes in the front, and it's a pretty good pincer maneuver. I do a whole bunch of damage this way. I get the unit down to, I think I get the unit down to 1 health. Between the rear attack and the big dangerous panic check. There's actually this is a good attack. Otherwise, the Thenn just kind of move onto this objective, and we'll see how the game looks at the end of this turn. Okay, so here's the situation at the beginning of turn 3. We just mentioned what is going on. Rattleshirt and the Wolves are pincering the Veterans unit and have it down to 1 health. Varamyr is on an objective, so I have 3 VPs at this point. 2 for holding objectives, 1 for killing a unit. The Ranger Cavalry have just appeared and are in the flank of the Thenn. The cat is nice and safe, it's not going to be attacked by anything. And then we have 2 units of raiders facing down Jon Snow's unit, and I'm going to get flank charged in Jarl's unit, basically. The unit of raiders with the raid leader has surged forth, so they're in this position here. They're not in any danger, but Jarl's unit is going to get properly cooked, and so I've popped Endless Horde down onto Jarl's unit in expectation of their incipient demise. Now, at this point, things are looking very, very good for the Free Folk. I have, despite the fact that I've lost a 5-point unit, I've lost a 5-point unit and smashed a 9-point unit to pieces and killed a 7-point unit. And I'm up on VPs. This is excellent. All I need to do is I'm going first, I have Styr take the swords, influence Rattleshirt's unit, and attack the veterans. Remember, the veterans have lost Disrupt, Counterstrike, and Relentless because the wolves are engaging them in the rear. And so I am making, against a one wound unit, I am making an 8 dice Sundering on 4s attack, which means I have about a 1 in 256 chance of missing everything. So yeah, I miss everything. And the unit lives. And my opponent actually activates the unit and swings at the wolves. Doesn't quite kill them. Then I attack the unit again with Rattleshirt, and they live again. Then my opponent heals them 6 wounds with Aemon, and activates Othel and kills the wolves. So that's kind of bad. What was once good has struggled a little bit. So where are we with that? Well, the good news is both my opponent's NCUs are activated. This unit is back on, like, I don't know, about this much health. The wolves are dead. But we're basically okay otherwise. And in particular, a really interesting thing happens. So I haven't really used, I've used Styr on Rattleshirt's unit. This unit has obviously been healed up a little bit, whatever, it's not the end of the world. But Aemon and his bros have activated, and the Thenn are fine. They're in full health with +1 armor from armor trophies, thanks to this kill over here. And so this unit of cavalry, rather than try and take this fight, try and take 2 things at once, right? Because what's going to happen, you just know this is going to happen. They'll come into the flank, the cat will countercharge. Now Disruptor's on this unit, they're tied down, whatever. Instead, this unit comes all the way down around to there. Now, I don't realize this at the time, but what they're doing is they're setting up for a sentinel. They're basically saying, okay, if you swing at this unit again, Mr. 8 dice Sundering, Vicious Intimidating Presence, you are going to get jobbed from the front and the back. You're going to lose your commander. I actually forget that they have Sentinel, but I am so chicken shit of fighting this unit that I just decide not to. Instead, what we do, so this fight happens over here, and some interesting stuff goes down. So Jon's unit comes in, they are weakened, they smash this unit up, they smash Jarl's unit up, but not completely. Jarl's unit pivots around to fight them, and the raiders come in as well, and so we have a 2v1 fight. The Thenn just chill where they are, and the cat will run in this direction. Varamyr chills where he is and destroys those stakes. He might need them out of the way next turn. And then I pull kind of an interesting play. So Jarl's regiment is down to 3 wounds, and the raid leader and raider unit are at, as you can see them. And I have nothing in hand. I activate Craster, and I pop him onto the letters just to heal. I heal Jarl's unit, and then I draw Reform and Regroup. Now, I've just healed Jarl's unit, so now he has 5 health in him. But he has the Endless Horde on him. And so what I do is I play the Endless Horde, I play Reform and Regroup, and I take 4 wounds from Jarl's unit and put it in the full health Thenn, just to deal damage to Jarl's unit. Then I move Jarl into the Thenn. Now, Reform and Regroup lets you either move an attachment, restricting attachment limitations, or swap attachments. If I had tried to do this with the Raid Leader unit, I would have swapped the attachments. But instead, because the Thenn don't have an attachment, I can move Jarl into it, thus killing his unit, thus proccing the Endless Horde, who appear and charge in the flank. And this is the big money play. Now, I don't actually do that much damage. I'm going to get jobbed here. This is not going to be a fight that they will necessarily win long term. I think I do 2 or 3 wounds with a flank attack. It sucks. But the Sentinel business is not happening, and I'm actually able to, like, this is a fight that we can now maybe put enough force in to win. On top of that, I score 2 objectives again. So the score is now looking very good. We're at, I want to say 5 points at the end of turn 3 to my opponent's 0. So here's the situation that we've described, right? Rattleshirt is continuing to fight these guys. He must have taken a swing after the fact. And so he's engaging a now fairly wounded unit. This unit, to be fair, is as afraid of Rattleshirt as he is of them. With only 3 models in the unit, if they take a swing at him, they're in some serious danger. They actually tried to swing at him last turn, and they needed to pass 2 rolls on 10s, and they passed both times with a panic token. So that really sucked. But this unit is, normally this is a fight that they would handily win, but because Rattleshirt made all of his attacks against them while the wolves were alive, he was basically okay. So we have this fight over here, and what is going to happen almost immediately, my opponent is the first turn, and they are going to, first player, and they're going to swing into them, and they're going to do like a bunch. This unit is going to get pretty stuffed around. John is going to finish off these guys, or just about. It'll take him most of the rest of the game. But the Thenn will stay here, and Varamyr will stay here, and the cat will get around into this unit. So the cat makes the charge in, and they've actually aligned, so the cat has a rear charge, and it knocks out a guy. And then basically there's a little bit of a Hail Mary play. We have Othel takes the shot into this regiment, but he whiffs 2 shots and I pass my save. So we're fine. We fight these guys, they take some more damage, and the situation is effectively spiraling out of control. My opponent has so few activations at this stage as well that although what he does do is he has the veterans just like take the swing and they pass their checks again, and they actually take a rank off of Rattleshirt's unit. I have so many, like, and they get healed, like unsurprisingly, right? They get healed back by 6 again. It doesn't really matter because I have enough time left at the end of the turn that I can have, I think I have Craster take the horse, and Rattleshirt actually retreats from combat and charges in, and he delivers the coup de grace on this regiment. He wipes them out. And he wipes them out with swords next turn, but basically he's got gang up, he takes them down, and that scores me 2 points because that's my commander. So at the end of this turn, this is effectively the end of the game. John is going to belt his way through them and move down this direction, but the Thenn will hold, right? The Thenn have 3+ saves because of armor trophies. They can just do a fighting retreat against John. They might even win that fight eventually with Hold the Line. Varamyr is going to continue sitting here for the rest of the game, and I've just scored a kill here. I can line up the rest of my army to face off against these veterans, but I am on, at the end of this turn, I'm on 9 points. So because I am on 9 points, there's just no way. He doesn't have the pieces left to keep me off all 3 objectives. Varamyr is probably going to sit here and score this one again, and that will comfortably put me on like 10 or 11 points next turn. So just for posterity, here is what the game looks like when we call it. I am in a comfortable position to secure 2 more points. It's going to be my turn next turn. We're rolling into round 5, and I'm on 9. So look, overall, this was a super interesting game. Outflank versus outflank was really technical, and I was genuinely really happy with how, like, it costs Varamyr, but Varamyr is a value pick for 3 points. That's fine, but it costs 2 points for the cat and 4 points for Jarl to give you this kind of like double threat, impossible to ignore, impossible to trivially fight through. Like, you can't kill 2 units with 1 unit easily coming in the rear. It's really interesting, and I think it's going to play into, I think there's a very good chance that Jarl, despite the fact that really what he does is he comes in, he fights a bit, he dies, and then you go, space created. Like you're a League of Legends guy who just fed 3v1. But he does that, right? He's insignificant. He's not going to have any points when he dies, and he can probably hold a more expensive enemy unit in place for like long enough. And the VP swing that represents is significant because he's worth nothing, the cat's worth nothing, and together they can tie up whatever might score with your opponent on that flank. They will do it reliably. And when you add in the chance for them to actually like potentially win a fight on that flank, like one of them has Styr influencing him. I have Rattleshirt's cards potentially, plus the Free Folk deck. I was able to weaken the archers in this game, weaken the ranger hunters by using Stranded and Exposed, because I actually had 2 units next to them rather than 1. Stuff like that, right? The Free Folk deck turns on a little more. It could genuinely be part of a very competitive build with more than just like, okay, yeah, Varamyr Commander is going to probably run crap like this. I have a 6 Raiders plus Varamyr list that I will actually seriously consider playing at some point because it's absolutely filth and just subverts the entire game. But yeah, like it Jarl felt way better than he ever has. I have tried to use him in previous versions of the game, and he was just a shit sandwich because of all of the various conditions on his use. You needed to use an NCU to claim a specific zone to bring him on. Like it cost an action, and it could be blocked, and it could be stopped by Endless Horde, by Targaryen Field Control, and it competed with the Endless Horde. There were so many things stacked against him, and none of them do now, right? Endless Horde, wonderful redesign, like super good change, easy to play, but it doesn't monopolize the zone. Just Jarl outflank units, they just come on by themselves. I'm actually a little scared of Greyjoys realizing that they have outflank as a second attachment in regiments because Greyjoys can really build some Death Stars. And the idea of like, hey everyone, it's a unit of Black Tide Chosen with 2-point Qual, a Raider Captain, and Baron's Influence sitting behind your lines. Like that's hauntingly scary. I don't know if they will actually figure that out, but it terrifies me. So yeah, really interesting. Really enjoyed Jarl. This is comfortably like I made some mistakes that the game should have been much more on lock. That Walrus clan unit should not have died. I let them do that. Remember, bloody where your opponent's cards are. But this was super interesting, highly technical, really fun, and I hope you enjoyed it.